Hello everybody, Dave here for a new series or new group of videos on Dave Gets Wood. Now, I mentioned on one of my recent videos that I'd got a new project that I was going to do, but I might not record, and even though I'm recording this, I still might not put it public. Probably will. Okay, anyway, so basically what the situation is that it's one of my niece's birthdays soon. What's the date today? 17th. So birthday on the 24th. And I know that she's been watching quite a few of the wood videos that I do. So I've decided to make her something. Now I've got a general idea, or a main idea of what I'm making, but there's a couple of bits I haven't decided on yet. So basically, a little bit like how I've made the resin house number plate sign, and the ones for my folks. I'm planning on basically doing a similar thing for Holly, but instead of it being a number or anything else, it's going to be her name. Right? So what I've done is, using the computer, I've managed to get a font that I liked. Bit of an intricate detailing on it though, and quite large as well. But yeah, on 2 pieces of paper it's taken. So I've gone with a style that I like. Now the piece of wood that I'm going to use is a continuation of the other piece of wood. Now, the reason I'm using this is because although it may just look like a scrap piece of wood, it actually isn't. This is actually a very decent piece of wood with a bit of history that I don't really know about, but I have been told about. So it's not like it's just a random shitty piece of wood. That's not the case. Okay, so the idea is obviously to carve Holly's name into it. Now there's a few differences to the previous resins that I've done so far. First off, the sort of details on the lettering, the shadow detail, that I'm going to fill those in with black resin. The lettering, if I've got the colour, I'm going to do pink, because that's a colour that Holly likes. Now, one of the things I'm going to do differently is that I'm going to put, for both colours, I'm not going to fill the cavity with those colours. What I'm going to do is put a certain amount in, but leave a gap to the top so that I can then top them off with clear resin, to hopefully give a much better look and a much better depth of look. Now, one of the things that I'd been toying with, the idea that I wanted to do, was to have some kind of light on the back of the wood, shining, to be able to shine through the resin. Now, there's a couple of problems with that. Number one is it either means going all the way through the wood for all of the lettering. That's a lot of work. Or potentially making some holes in the back, smaller holes, just for light to get through. but then I would have to work out a way of getting the lights to actually go into the holes, and could be some problems. Excuse me. I do apologise. I then went to bed just after midnight. Woke up at 5. Been up since 5. It's now 9 o'clock. On near 10 o'clock, and I've just started getting tired. So anyway, yeah. So I wanted to be able to use lights, probably LED strips. The thing with that as well was, well, you can have your own colours with the LED strips, so I could perhaps do just clear resin, but then the clear resin wouldn't look good when there's no light on it, or at least it wouldn't look as good. So I'm kind of initially going to go with the concept of no lights, and see how we can get it to look, because it is a very detailed design on this, and I don't know exactly how that's going to go. Now with the new Dremel bits that I got, I did find I was able to do better straight lines, but I have also now managed to get myself a few rulers. It's been that long since I bought a ruler that I forgot they come in packages like this. Yeah, so I've got a couple of rulers to help me draw the letter in, but also I'm hoping, well, to be honest, I was hoping that with this one I may have been able to work up against the edge with the Dremel, but this feels very thin, and it is very thin, and I think the Dremel will eat through that in a matter of seconds. Now this ruler is a bit thicker. It's what, 2mm, 1mm maybe. Yeah, 1mm thick, so it's much tougher, but at the same time I think the Dremel will probably still eat away at it, but I may be able to give it a try to see if I can get those perfect straight edges. So yeah, okay, so that's basically the plan. Now I have also received a new batch of resins which I haven't used before. To be honest, I was expecting bigger bottles than what came, but it's still more than I'd been using before, so I should be okay doing this. But I am going to need to have a look in my colours to see if I have got the colours that I want to use, because I do want to use pink and black, but if I haven't got pink, I know she likes blue, so I can always use blue and black. So yeah, so one of the things that I'm going to need to do is work out exactly how I'm going to lay these out. Now, because on this piece of wood I've tried to, I'll show you that one actually, working from this end, you may see that there's this white mark here. It's actually a dowel which has been quite poorly knocked in there. So I didn't want to have to incorporate that into the design. So basically what I've got should fit into this section. Now, unfortunately, there are a number of holes in this, but as far as I'm aware, none of them go all the way through. But even if they do, well, yeah, even if they did, I'm going to be able to sort those out. But hopefully the holes will actually be behind where some of the lettering is. Now I am going to need to cut these out a little bit as well, so I can actually see a little better where they're going to go. Because kind of at the moment it's sort of winging it a little bit. It's going to be around about there. So we are quite close up to the edges because the white bit's there and the end is here. But yeah, so what I need to do is cut these bits of paper down a little bit, and then tape them down, and then probably what I'm going to have to do is basically what I did with the previous one that I did, where I got the Dremel and basically like drilled pinpoints, basically do it the same way that I did on actually getting this copy. Excuse me, the sneeze. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so the way that I've been able to get these off the computer, because I haven't got a printer, was to basically put the piece of paper up on the screen and then pinpoint corners and curvatures and things like that, and then just do dot to dot and match it all up. So basically I can do the same thing with the Dremel, because unfortunately this wood is too tough for basically going through the wood. Let's see. Yeah, you're not really going to see it. So I'm going to need to sort those out anyway. So that's what I'm going to do in a sec. Okay, let's get ready to do some cutting. Right, now one of the things as well with this is I am going to need to cut down a piece of wood, but I don't want to do that until I've got the lettering basically outlined and started, and then I know exactly how much space I've got. Oh, even just cutting these down a little bit is going to help. And I think rather than doing each individual letter, unless I need to, I can just do the whole thing. Right, so even though these pieces of paper are slightly different sizes, all the letters are all pretty much the same size. Right. Okay, so that can go somewhere around there, which means that that can come across a little bit. Might be alright around there. Moved it again. Okay. Now, a lot like all of the things that I make or do, I'm not after perfection. Sorry, Holly. But at the end of the day, homemade stuff is rarely going to be, but it's not about perfection, is it? Now, one thing I will say is, although I am sort of prepping this now, I'm not actually going to be dremeling it now, because, well, for me it's still a bit early in the day to be making that kind of noise. Whereas I can, because I've been up so early today, I can wait a little while and be a little bit more respectful with the noise I'm going to make. Okay, so now that that is like that, I mean, I could try. You know, I will. I am going to try and give it a bit of an indentation, but only because for things like the O, that is going to be very difficult to follow a certain line. Basically, I'd have to make a lot of dots and then join the dots. Whereas if I could actually press it in a bit, but then if I press in a bit and it's not very good. We'll see how it goes. It's interesting though, I mean, I'm not an artistic person, not at all, but I suppose technically this is creating art. I'm trying to use this as a little bit of a guide, but I don't think it's going to be really marking the wood underneath, but we'll see. Now, one thing with this as well is one difference with this compared to, yeah, I'm not doing this very well. Okay, I won't do that. I'm making it worse. One of the things, I can do these, can't I? The straight lines anyway. Forgot what I was going to fucking say now. What was you going to say, Dave? Can't remember. Ah, yes. One of the differences between this piece and the other resin pieces that I've done is that this one isn't for outdoor. So, this one can have interior varnish put on it, which is much nicer than the exterior, because the exterior varnish is kind of very thick, not easy to spread. It gives a decent finish, but it's very different because it has to deal with weather, whereas the interior varnish is much nicer to work with and should give a much nicer finish as well, especially on top of a clear resin which is on top of the colour resin. Now if you want to know sort of why I'm doing that, yes, part of it is artistic about the look of the depth of the piece, but also it's so that I don't have to sand the colour at all. So hopefully the coloured resin should look untouched. It should look very nice compared to what I've been able to do in the past. Because like with the if I've shown them on YouTube, the river snake that I was trying to do, because I was sanding the blue was going everywhere. It was making a mess of the wood. It was making not a mess of the resin itself, but it was a lot of work to bring the resin back to a nice finish. Whereas with the colour, the colour will go in and cure and dry, and with the blowtorch hopefully we should have no problems with air bubbles. And then then when it comes to putting the clear in, I can make sure that the clear overflows if necessary, so that I can get a real nice connection between the resin and the wood. Excuse me. Then I can work that clear resin back, because the clear resin isn't going to spread a colour into the rest of the wood. So yeah, so there has been quite a lot of thought process behind all this. And then once the clear resin has been sanded and sort of brought back to life and has been polished up, that can then take a coat or two of clear interior varnish, which should then allow it to have a very nice finish. That's the plan anyway. Now, I may at some points talk about the possibility of doing a full clear resin layer on the top of this. I might do it, I might not do it, I don't know. At the moment, because of the time I've got, I mean, I've kind of put it on myself. I could just go and buy a gift. But for some reason I've decided to put it on myself to make something for her instead. So yeah, so I may have to limit what I do on the top regarding a clear pour, if I'm running out of time, because of the things that I've got to do on this. A few of them involve making a bit of noise, so I've got to be respectful of when I'm going to be making that noise. Also, this is considerably better having metal rollers for this. But anyway, I haven't bought rulers since I was in fucking school. Even then, I don't think I bought them. Now, I don't know if this is actually going to be imprinting onto the wood, but and with the lettering as well, I did initially just go with the actual lettering without the accents around it. I don't know if that's the right word. But the letters didn't quite look right. And then when I added the extra bits, which were part of the font anyway, yeah, it looks so much better that yeah, I realised at that point I really need to do those as well. It means more work, but should make it look a lot better. And doing those bits in black as well should hopefully make them look more like the shadow of it, rather than, and give it a 3D effect, rather than if I did it the same colour. I think it'd just look a bit weird. So again, even though I'm not artistic, maybe it is being artistic. Now, one thing with this, it's all well and good, but where I've got curvature, unfortunately, I do kind of have to freehand it, and that's where the more imperfections can creep in. There's not a lot I can do about it really, I'm afraid. Hurting my fingers now, this is. What I'll do in a second is I'll try and lift this up and see if it is imprinting, because if it isn't, there's no point carrying on with this. I mean, I know that the other process works because I've tried it, it's just a little awkward. Bit time consuming. Oh. Right, well, as you can see, it shows the lettering up much better with the darker lines, but let's see if it's actually imprinting. And that would be no. Can't see a thing. Okay. Right, so there's not much point us carrying on doing that. Right, okay, in that case then, what I'll be looking to do on the next video, as I mentioned, is basically getting the Dremel, and I'll do sort of one letter at a time, doing its dots, corners, and I mean, I mentioned that like with curves, I'm doing it freehand. I'll sort of show you the way that I've been sort of trying to do it. Okay. Right, so if you've got those two shapes, right, so you've got zigzag and a curve. Well, with the zigzag, it's dead easy to replicate. You do a dot there, a dot there, dot there, dot there, dot there, dot there. You do your dots, you can fucking see it on there. Do your dots and then you line them up piece to piece. Straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line, straight line. Now with a curve, it's much harder to do that because you could put a dot there and a dot there, but how do you know how much angle to give, how much curvature to give? Well, okay, so you could put a dot in the middle of the curve, but if you look at the curve, one side is steeper than the other. So this side's curve is different to that side's curve. So now if you just go with the three dots, you'd have the wrong line. So what I do, or have been doing, is basically going by halves. So you've got a dot at the end and a dot in the middle, halfway. So I do a dot halfway between them, and then a dot halfway between them, and then a dot halfway between the other ones. Now that gives you a line of curvature that you can follow, and that is how I would do it. So there you go. So that's what I do. But like I said, it still ends up with imperfections, unfortunately. And one of the things we're using the Dremel. I mean, I've seen videos of people doing sort of letter carving a bit like this, and they're able to freehand perfectly straight lines. But obviously, they're people that have had a lot more experience than I have. But also, as we've noticed before, it can depend a lot on the wood itself. So this wood is very tough, so as I'm going through it, I do have to use a bit of force, but at the same time it's less likely to spear off into an odd direction. Whereas the early carvings that I was doing, the wood was much softer, so it was very easy for the Dremel tool to basically just wander off in its own direction and yeah, create indentations. Just seeing a neighbour in someone else's garden. Yeah, so the differences in wood can make a big difference. But anyway, right, I'm going to take a break for a bit before I actually make any kind of a start on this. So have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you in a bit.